Okay, welcome everybody to the Rotary Club of New York, club number 6 in the world, to the virtual Rotary Luncheon. Today is September 22, 2022. Very delighted to have a very high level speaker here today, Katerina Manoff. She will talk a little bit about her organization ENGin, and we're going to learn about how we as Rotarians maybe can even get involved with teaching Ukrainian students our beautiful English language. So without further ado, I pass the musical gavel over to Audrey, our pianist. Audrey, thank you.
Drop the phone, sorry.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Thank you as always.
Welcome.
Now, I wish to just welcome everybody once again to our meeting today. We have, as always, and I'm very delighted to always mention him, our past president of Rotary International, Wilfred Wilkinson, in the room. Hi, Wilfred, good to see you. Of course, our own past president, Judge Gerard Schriffen, and many people from abroad, actually. We have Colberto Ranieri from Italy, Sumur Orkan, Turkish, Terry Pernion from Switzerland, and our own members like Tommy Khan, Malika, and of course our president, Levent, who will now introduce our speaker. Levent, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much. It's an honor to introduce Katerina Manoff. Katerina Manoff is a Ukrainian-born not-for-profit leader with over a decade of experience in the education field. After beginning her career as an investment banker, she got her master's in education and worked in a variety of roles in charter schools, public schools, ed tech startups, and not-for-profits. She founded ENGin in 2020 to transform the Ukraine through the English language and international connections, and is currently navigating the challenge of running an organization in wartime. Katerina is also a mom of 2 young girls and enjoys writing in her spare time. Katerina, the floor is yours.
All right, so I hope everyone can hear me. And I should be sharing my screen. So Andreas, can you just let me know you can see my screen, but not my notes?
We can see it very well, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you so much for having me to come and speak to y'all. Glad to meet you virtually. And like Levent said, I'm Katerina. I'm the founder of ENGin, and I'll just jump right in and tell you my story. So ENGin actually started with just one student and just one awkward Zoom call. It was several years before the war and just before the pandemic. And I was volunteering to mentor a 17-year-old young woman named Elena through her college application process. Now, Elena was no ordinary college applicant. She was an absolute genius. She was a nationally recognized pianist, a scientist, community activist. She was just so smart and brilliant and extraordinary that I was even a little intimidated by her when I met, even though I was supposed to be mentoring her. We started corresponding by email. You know, she was sending me her essay drafts, her application materials. I was giving feedback, and it was going great. Like I said, she seemed like a stellar college applicant, and she was living in Ukraine at the time. She was Ukrainian, but she hoped to study abroad to get some of the best educational opportunities out there, and before returning to Ukraine, to bring the knowledge back. That was her dream. And eventually we scheduled her for a Zoom call to keep working. And when we got on that Zoom, she could barely talk to me. And this was a huge shock because, like I mentioned, she's this extremely smart young woman, probably one of the top students in the entire country, of her year. And she had been studying English since first grade. And her written English was fine, not perfect, but a very high level. So when I got into that Zoom and she could barely form basic sentences, it was a huge surprise to me. And then I started digging and saying, what's going on here? And I found that there is a huge problem with speaking English in Ukraine. And, as much as Elena struggled with it, as a top student, others struggled with it much more. And almost all students in Ukraine do study English in school, because, the school system understands the importance of the language, right? It's the global language that will really open doors for them down the road, but they don't learn to speak. And Ukraine is actually one of the lowest ranked countries in Europe in terms of English proficiency. And as far as intercultural communication, which they do a test that compares countries here all over the world, not just Europe, and Ukrainian students were one of the lowest ranked there as well. So this is bad, right? It's bad on an individual level because someone like Elena can't reach her potential, can't go and access the top academic and professional opportunities. But it's also a tragedy on the national level, because, as I'm sure many of you realize already, English is such an essential skill in our interconnected world, and in almost any field, right? Whether you're looking at business, medicine, politics, the sciences, the arts, education, a lack of English really stunts economic growth and social progress. On this slide, I showing a little bit how English is the key, and I think it's mostly self-explanatory, right? When you have English, you can form partnerships, whether you're thinking about scientists collaborating together in research or businessmen working on joint venture together. International companies are much more likely to invest in a country like Ukraine if they know there's going to be an English-speaking workforce there. The majority of content published right now in the world, whether it's books, newspapers, scientific papers, is in English. So having access to that, having access to the cutting edge ideas and whatever your field is, all of that is when you can communicate with people outside of your country in the global language English, it just opens up the whole world. And Ukraine did not have that. And if you think about Ukraine, even before the war, right, compare that to nations like Norway or the Netherlands, where those are some of the top nations in Europe in terms of English fluency. The difference, right, in terms of economic and social development is just huge. So I wanted to find a way to help. I wanted to change those charts that I showed you a minute ago to push Ukraine up closer to the top. And my challenge was the fact that learning to speak a language, right, spoken fluency, which was what Elena and most Ukrainians were missing. It's really hard to achieve that without actually speaking. But with whom? Elena, like the vast majority of Ukrainian youth, could not afford an American or British tutor. So she was looking for free conversation partners online, and that turned up serious safety and quality issues. That wasn't working so well either. So then I had my big idea. What about American students who want to volunteer? They are fluent in English. Many of them are required to volunteer, by their high schools or universities. And so they would be the perfect match for Ukrainians who are trying to overcome this language barrier. And the key here is to, to recognize that we are not teaching English. We don't have teachers. Like I said, most Ukrainian students are learning English in school. Most Ukrainian adults have learned English when they were in school. They have that basic grammar, vocabulary foundation. They just need to learn how to apply that knowledge and actually speak. And so our solution is pairing Ukrainian youth with English-speaking volunteers for free online conversation practice and cross-cultural connection. What's really important, what's been important since the beginning, is this one-on-one connection. In typical classes or speaking clubs, when you have one person working with a group, you don't really get that speaking time, and so you can't learn to speak if you're not actively speaking. So the one-on-one piece was really, really important for us. 1 hour per week online, so anyone can access it, and 1 hour per week. So again, a question of access. In terms of people's schedules, we knew that everyone is busy. Ukrainians are busy, our volunteers are super busy. So we wanted to design a program that could fit into any schedule. The focus is on speaking. So again, this isn't teaching, this isn't grammar exercises. This is getting the student to actually overcome that fear and get the confidence and start pulling together, the conjugation they memorize in, 6th grade English class, and actually use it in the real world with a real human being. And then the limited duration, because everyone's starting at different levels, and some people, need just a few months. Some people have been with us for over a year. So really sticking with our students until they've gotten where they want to go in terms of English. And that was basically it. And so we launched, and it took off. Within a couple of months, we had hundreds and hundreds of students and volunteers. And for me, it was a huge shock, because I had started this as a little side project, to help some students. It was very small, but people loved it on both sides. And very quickly, we started, reimagining what ENGin could be. We realized that the model we had created offers radical flexibility, which means that we can reach anyone and we can reach everyone. Like I said, there is no start or end date. So anyone, 365 days a year, we can have volunteers and students joining. They choose their own schedule. There's no special skills or experience required. So it's truly open to anyone. And I very quickly went from, thinking about dozens of students and volunteers, or maybe hundreds, to thinking of thousands and tens of thousands. And I got very excited about this opportunity to grow, because I saw, even from those first months, huge benefits on both sides. So the students' English was improving for sure, which is what it all started with. But they were also raving about the intercultural exchange piece. So learning about another culture, making a friend halfway across the world was just such a unique and rewarding opportunity for them. So that the relationship piece, because it was one-on-one, the close relationships they built, and the cultural exposure. And it was surprising to me, the volunteers were benefiting just as much. So really it was this win-win model that could grow to almost any scale. So I said, well, how can I just let this go? I need to go all out on building this. And so we did. We've been building and growing for a year, about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and then the war started, and absolutely shattered our plans. To be honest, we had built out a team, to support all of these students and volunteers that we were working with. Almost everyone was in Ukraine. So when the war started, we had to pause operations. We did not know have any idea of what would be happening, what we could do. Most of the team could not work at all. And yeah, so we put everything on pause, and we said, okay, what do we do now? First, we were hoping, let's just wait until this war ends, but it was not ending. It was very clear it would just drag on. And I started thinking, is this time to shut down permanently, right? If we're seeing kids violently murdered each day, like we're seeing, for some of my team members, personally experiencing these horrible things. And is this really the time to think about, practicing English? But talking to my team and talking to our students, I saw that the vast majority wanted to keep going. Even in wartime, they wanted to share their stories and reach for new opportunities. They wanted to live and to fight. And they made it clear for me that ENGin, actually, our mission has never been more important than it is now during wartime, because it can help us answer this key question, right? That will determine the future of our country when the war is over, which is, how do we actually rebuild Ukraine after the war? So we reopened in early April, we actually not just reopened, but went full speed ahead. I had mentioned earlier that we started as a program for high school and college students, matching them with high school and college students. There was always a need and demand for ENGin from adults, for professional support, because even before the war, to get a great job in Ukraine, English actually was quite important. And if you're in Ukraine, working in Ukraine, because you're working with foreign partners and clients, English fluency was the key to the best jobs. And we were not able to help adults before because we just couldn't get adult volunteers. But with the war, there is a higher interest from adults here in the US in volunteering with us. So we opened our program to serve Ukrainians up to age 35. We hope to remove that limit. It's just a matter of getting enough volunteers. Frankly, that's always a sort of a big factor for us. And we started working with volunteers of all ages, from 14 to, I think now we have, our oldest is 89. So it really is a huge diverse volunteer base. And what we're able to do now in the war context, right, is a few things. So as I mentioned, with our older students who are working or were working, unfortunately, many people have lost their jobs now due to the war. And if you look at who's hiring, it's going to be international companies, and English is really, really important. So we have students coming in who are hoping to improve their English to get a better job. In terms of students, right, we have students who have moved around a lot, whose schools haven't reopened, who are really missing out on learning, right? And we fill some of those gaps because, our program, you can participate from anywhere. As long as you have an internet connection, you can do it anytime. So even, compared to like group online classes, those happen at a certain time. And if the air raid siren goes off, as they so often do all over Ukraine, you have to run to the bomb shelter, you miss that class. With us, you're working with your volunteer, and you can, reschedule, or you have that extra flexibility because it is one-on-one. So I think from an educational perspective during this difficult time, we can provide these free educational opportunities to our younger students. We also have a bunch of students who are refugees now, and English is very important for them in settling into their new temporary homes and rebuilding their lives abroad. So we have students sort of in Ukraine, but also all across the world, who have fled because of the war. And as I found out, we have some students in the US. I would have thought, who needs ENGin? Everyone here speaks English. Sure, there will be some resources for them. But no, we have people from the US, reaching out to us and saying, I need to learn English, but there's just no support that I can find. There's nothing that's accessible to me, not having a car, not having much money. And they come to us and we're able to help. And so as we help each of our individual students, whether it's, from a job perspective, an education perspective, or refugee resettlement perspective, and we do this on a large scale, we are building a whole generation of English fluent and culturally competent young Ukrainians who will eventually rebuild our nation. And right now, unfortunately, I'm sure you've heard a lot about Ukraine in the news. There's billions of dollars of aid going to Ukraine, but not really for rebuilding, not really for skill development. And it's shocking and tragic. And honestly, this is one of the main reasons I keep doing this, despite it being really, really hard and like almost feels, nearly impossible at times. But it's because it needs to be done, and yet no one is doing it. The focus is very much on urgent humanitarian aid, medicines, evacuations, food, blankets, military aid, which is of course so important. But there isn't really, this looking forward, like, okay, when the war will end, right? Hopefully sooner rather than later, but at some point it will end, and rebuilding will just be impossible without without a generation of people who can work with our international partners to help rebuild the economy. So, so I'm trying to fill that gap. And here's where we are now. So we've been around for 2.5 years. We have over 10,000 students and nearly 10,000 volunteers. Some volunteers work with multiple students. So it's a bit smaller number. And we have done, we have very limited resources. So we're not able to test everyone, but we did a sample of a couple hundred students pre and post evaluating their speaking skills. And we see that the vast majority of them do improve in just a few months. And this is just as far as English level. So here we're not even measuring all of these other benefits that are very difficult to measure, right? The emotional support, especially during the war, we hear from so many students that these sessions are a safe space during the most difficult time of their life. Just having someone that they can talk to psychologically is a huge benefit from them. Their ability to tell their stories. We've had students who, because they are confident speaking in English on Zoom, have gone on the news in the U.S. and talked to, some of them have gone on national television actually and talked to millions of Americans and told their stories. We have, people who are able to go and take advantage of scholarship programs and different academic opportunities when their own universities are not able to function in Ukraine, because again they're comfortable speaking in English, because they're comfortable conversing with people from different cultures. So there's just so many benefits, and of course, as I said, the volunteers report many of the same benefits in terms of really how rewarding it is to change a life and see that tangible progress and gain a new friend, or we hear phrases like my best friend, the daughter I never had. It's all of these benefits that are frankly, they're not measurable, right? They're difficult to count and put a number on the slide, but these are stories we hear every day. And so we know we've had such a huge impact on this community of nearly 20,000 people who have been through our program. But of course, we have a long way to go. My goal is to get to at least 100,000 students within the next few years. So we're continuing to grow as quickly as we can, just because we know that to have a national impact, we need to be much bigger. And because even an individual perspective, we have so many people coming to us every single week because they've heard about your program and I really need this support. Because like I mentioned, no one else is doing this, right? So it's not like they can find, most of them have the opportunity to find anything else. I've heard of small initiatives, here and there, so very grassroots, it's few volunteers get together and they help a few students in their community or online with English, which is great for those people who can access it. But, but we're talking about a few dozen people, maybe a couple hundred. And like I said, the people who need this, it's hundreds of thousands. And so, the trick is building an organization that can support that and be there for everyone who needs this. And if this resonates with you and you would like to help out, here are some ways you can do that, because this is definitely, a very grassroots community endeavor. This is not something I or any one person can do on their own. So we've very much grown to where we have because of support of people in the community. And the first and very important thing is, becoming a volunteer. We have hundreds of students on our waiting list right now, and we are always in need of volunteers. As I mentioned before, really anyone who speaks English and has an internet connection can be our volunteer. Minimum age is 14, although the real need, our real shortage is adult volunteers, so age 18 plus. We have a huge imbalance of students versus volunteers there. We have a very quick process, which I'll mention in a second, for how to become a volunteer. And as I mentioned, you can do it anytime. It's just 1 hour per week. The other piece would be spreading the word with friends, family members, and colleagues. Perhaps you know people who might be interested in being our volunteers. We have a page on our website, and I will share all the links with Andrea. So hopefully he can share with all of you, where we have flyers and just text that you can copy and paste to make it really easy for all of you to spread the word. So please think about what other communities you're a part of. Could be, professional, social, any clubs or associations, churches or other religious organizations. We had volunteers had a lot of success. They talk about ENGin at their place of worship, and we have a bunch of people signing up to join. If you have kids in there, in university, for example, like I said, we have a lot of volunteers from colleges and universities, and they're really great volunteers. So really anyone who might want to hear about us, because we're a small nonprofit, we don't have a marketing budget, so it really is just word of mouth to let people know that we're out there and this opportunity exists. Especially now when so many people want to help Ukraine. I keep hearing, like, I want to help in a hands-on way, but like, how can I do it? I don't have any special skills. I can't go over to Ukraine. This is pretty much the only opportunity I've heard of where you can actually volunteer directly with Ukrainians and help without leaving your house. And the last piece on the financial side, we do rely on donations to survive. Our costs are, it's all nearly all program costs, 95%. And we raise money from people in the US, because in Ukraine right now no one has any money. It's very important for us to keep the program free, because otherwise students frankly just couldn't afford it. So I'll send the link for that as well. Would be very grateful for any donations. They really do make a huge difference. Our cost per student is just about $20 on average. So yeah, so it really goes a long way. I mean, because we have so many students, the costs do add up. And that's why it's important to, for us to always be asking for support, so we can make sure we don't have to turn anyone away. And we are starting to look into grant opportunities. So we are a 501c3, so everything is tax deductible. And we, it's tough to find things that fit. I've been looking for a lot of grants and haven't found anywhere we fit the criteria. So any organizations, that can where it might be a fit for what we're doing, would love to hear recommendations and referrals for that as well. And just to finish up, if any of you are interested in signing up as volunteers, what it looks like, we have an online application. I will send the link by email. And then we do a 15-minute virtual interview with everyone, with every applicant. And we do offer training, and we have synchronous and asynchronous options. So it's just a one-time training and a short volunteer quiz, and then one-on-one with, oh, I'm sorry, did I miss a question there? Yeah, and then we do matching one-on-one. Pick the right student for every volunteer to make sure it's a good experience for both. All right, so I will stop there. That's all I had. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Katerina, first of all, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. When I got familiar with your organization, I thought it's not often that a nonprofit organization can do so much with essentially an idea that can involve all of us in a very simple and efficient way. So I thought it would be ideal for our Rotary Club members. Maybe we just stop the screen share so we can go back to the room. And
of course.
yeah, okay, great. Okay. I think our past president, Gerard, he has a question to lead us into the discussion part of it. Gerard, go right ahead.
I think you're on mute, Gerard.
I'm guilty of something I chastise others for. I apologize for that. And anyway, thank you very much, Katerina, for your presentation. I have a number of questions. First of all, English has and Ukrainian have virtually nothing in common with each other. So how do you bridge that gap? Specifically, if the volunteer does not speak Ukrainian, then how does the volunteer tutor connect with a Ukrainian student who may speak very little English?
Yeah, absolutely. So that hasn't been a problem, to be honest, because as I mentioned, most Ukrainians do study English in school. So this absolutely would not work if we were starting with complete beginners. And if someone is a complete beginner, we actually don't accept them to the program because we know that it'll be exactly what you said. We definitely want this to be a productive experience on both sides. So just like we have a 15-minute Zoom interview with every volunteer, we do the same with every student, and we make sure, can you have a basic conversation? Do you have that foundation to build on? And most of them do. We turn away very few people from for that reason. Just because as it happens in Ukraine, there is a widespread culture of studying English, and what you're really doing is you're just really helping them connect and unlock that knowledge that they already have, and and um, and overcome that fear of speaking, because they have it in their head, right? They've spent 10 years, many of them, memorizing these conjugations and words, but they just never get to use them. There's no opportunity to use them. And so it just kind of sits there dormant beneath the surface, and you go in and unlock it. And that's why it's so rewarding for the volunteer, because you really do see all this progress in a few months, because confidence is such a big part of it. And being there, being that safe, reassuring person, we're like, come on, you can make mistakes. You can talk to me and it'll be okay. I mean, it's just huge for them. So yeah, you're not teaching anyone from scratch. They do, already speak some English, and almost none of our volunteers speak any Ukrainian. We have a few just by chance from the diaspora, but the vast majority are people who have zero connection to Ukraine, zero knowledge of Ukraine, or sometimes, the student will teach you a few words of Ukrainian, which is fun. But no, there's, we definitely make sure there's no language barrier. And we also provide materials. So if someone's less advanced, you won't be talking to them just, like a conversation with a friend. We have sort of discussion questions and slides, and that helps scaffold them. So that helps a lot as well.
So you've answered some of the other questions I've had. Could you elaborate a little more? What kind of orientation do you provide for the instructors?
Yeah, so we know due to the everyone's busy schedules, we can't have training for weeks and weeks. So we really try to get all the most essential information in one training. It goes about 75 minutes on Zoom, and there we talk about the logistics of how to organize and schedule these sessions and get in touch, and all of those practical pieces, as well as the pedagogical pieces. So we introduce our session materials, and we talk about, I think, like 4 or 5 top key techniques of how you can help them, what error correction, getting the conversation going if they're not very talkative, pronunciation, things like that. And then we actually have a volunteer handbook that is online, and has a huge wealth of resources that people can access as they need them. So we're not overwhelming you with all this information, but it's there for you. Now I'm just going to briefly show on my screen so you have an idea. So we have in our handbook a whole bunch of videos and written materials, so you kind of see whatever you have an issue with. Here, let's say, you want to learn more about error correction, encouraging your buddy if they have low confidence, keeping conversation going, some cultural things about Ukraine. We added this with the war. If your student has experienced trauma, which most of us Ukrainians have, how to deal with that. So we have a lot of resources, which are sort of how-tos. We send short, like 5 to 10 minute supplemental training things every 2 weeks for volunteers who want to keep learning. And then there's the actual session material. So this is what you do in sessions, and they're optional. So a lot of volunteers will start off using them, and then they kind of become friends with their students, and they can come up with their own things. But there's as much, we have different topics. They could be used in any order. So it's really like choose your own adventure. Our goal is to just provide anything you might need, and then you choose what resonates best. And each of these session plans, again, it's not grammar exercise, it's a very speaking focused plan of here's some discussion questions, or let's watch this 3-minute YouTube video and then here's some questions about that, or let's have a debate, or here's a role-playing activity, or here's a word game. So it's a variety of activities, and we've never had anyone complain that we didn't have enough, because we have so much. And sometimes people say, well, where do I start? And then we can help navigate to what's best for you. But our goal is to just provide everything that you might need.
Thank you,
Thank
Katerina.
you.
We have our President Levent who has a question, and then Tom McCann.
Thank you so very much. Oh, please go ahead, Tom.
Yes. Hello, Mr. President. Good to see you. Yes. Okay,
How are you?
Andre, it's good to see everybody else there. Yes. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Not
Can you hear
great,
me?
Tom, not great. It's a lot of
No,
static,
okay.
it's echoing.
How about that? Is that better, Andre?
Yeah,
Can you hear
yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, just want to say hello, everyone. Katrina, thank you so much for your presentation. I just want to tell the other Rotarians online here, I have some personal experience of studying languages on the internet. There is a service you can download an app and you go through this Boston company and you give them a credit card and they hook you up with teachers from other countries. And I studied Spanish when I was in high school 30 years ago. And I never had the opportunity to practice so much. And I was able to get the practice over through the internet. And it cost me about $10 an hour, which in person would cost 10 times that amount. So I want to tell the other Rotarians who are online that it's a very good way to learn a language on the internet, and it works very good. So I think you're on the right track, Katrina, getting this done in the Ukraine, and the Ukrainians who want to learn English. This is the way to go, and it's the most cost-effective way. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this is
Okay.
exactly these services, where you can find a teacher just like you did, Thomas, is, it's that's sort of the model we're trying to replicate, but for free, just because even $10 an hour, right, for most of us in the United States, totally affordable. For most Ukrainians, wildly unaffordable. And so, yeah, we're trying to do basically that, but make it accessible by keeping it free so that anyone can do it. But that's a great analogy.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks, Katerina. Let's keep going with the questions a little bit, so we get more in. President Levin, please.
Hi, Katrina. Thank you so much for an awesome presentation. Just for being someone that came to the United States when I was 10, not knowing the language, and then later on learning Spanish as a third language. Most of these students, I believe, it's not that they don't understand, they don't know the language, they've learned it, but it's just, speaking it is very different because you're translating from your language to the other language, and structuring the sentences and how it comes across is the biggest challenge for them because they're not practicing. So this is more to provide a practice partner for them to better structure their sentences and get their thoughts across. My question to you was that this is something amazing that you've done in 2.5 years, 10,000 students, and you mentioned your goals of reaching 100,000 more. This is amazing. In the future, do you see this as becoming such a great idea? Do you see this as becoming more of an international where people that speak different languages that want to learn English would also be able to participate?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've gotten that a question since like the first days. So I can say we're international from the volunteer side in that we have English speakers from over 80 countries as our volunteers. Now, most of them are from the US because I'm here and I'm able to spread the word here. As far as having students outside Ukraine, honestly, no, I can't do that because I'm barely keeping the program open as it is because it's just really difficult to get funding, and I don't want to take on something, that I just can't do. I'm just a regular person. There's no huge organization behind me, and like you said, the fact that I've even made it last that long and got to 10,000 students is frankly a miracle. Most nonprofits like this fail if they don't have, some strong pool of wealth behind them. And yeah, I think what I want to do is really create a model that can be replicated. And we've seen this. We've seen actually a number of our volunteers replicate our model. We've had one in Indonesia for people in Indonesia for wanting to learn English. They worked with, that was student to student, and our volunteers basically, copied it, which is fine. We kind of give them the tools and say, if you want to copy it, please. And they did it for a few hundred students. So on a smaller scale, but that was very cool to see. I think the model would work in anywhere, and I hope people continue learning about it and copying it and doing it in other countries and also for other languages, because certainly people, even in Ukraine, they come to me and say, well, I want to learn German or I want to learn French, can you do it? And I say, I can't, but I hope that others do start similar programs and use what we've learned as a case study and a blueprint for doing that. So that's how I think it will grow.
That's fantastic.
Great. Sumru, would you like to pose your question? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katerina. This is Sumru from Turkey. Actually, I'm a teacher educator working with English teachers in Turkey. Right currently, I am in Hunter College and as a visiting scholar. So I don't have a question, but a comment. You're working with an extremely vulnerable group of young people. So, I mean, it's highly important. I mean, they are going through and they went through a trauma. So it's highly important to integrate the trauma-based instruction and social emotional learning into your training so that your volunteers become much more, aware of the, the condition that the Ukrainian students have. So it's a highly dramatic situation, and your content will be so important. I mean, it's not only teaching English or improving their competence, but at the same time, knowing how to deal with their emotions. So yeah, thank you.
It's such a valuable comment and something I've thought about a lot. And I'm Ukrainian. I have family in Ukraine, so I very intimately understand what everyone is going through. And it's part of the reason I was afraid to reopen. I said, is this really the time? And are we just going to make things worse by, putting these sort of uninformed volunteers? I'm going to be honest, our volunteers are not teachers, and we're never going to replace, the kind of people you work with. Now, we have some English teachers who come to volunteer with us, and we love it because then, they're just so talented, and they use their own materials, they have their own approaches, and they're great. So if you know anyone who might be interested, please spread the word. But most of them, are going to be regular people who are not psychologists and can't do what a professional can. So I actually consulted with a Ukrainian American psychiatrist, an MD, PhD, so really, really qualified woman, to put together a guidelines for that we do at training now, just very basic, how to deal with a student who's gone through trauma. And so we do some of that, but if someone's really struggling, we ask the volunteer to bring the situation to us so we can connect them with professional support, because the worst thing would be to pretend that we can replace that. And so that's something we, definitely are. I don't know if we have a perfect answer to it, but we're doing our best. And we do, we did consult with a professional, and we do know psychologists, we have contacts across Ukraine. So if someone is struggling, we can connect them and have them participate in programs that are more suited to that. A final thing I will say, most of the students, when they come to us, right, if someone's just lost their home or lost their family member, they're not signing up for ENGin. Most of them are going to be in a better place where they're sort of, obviously everyone's traumatized and everyone's struggling, but we haven't had, reports of volunteers saying, oh my God, my student is just falling apart and I don't know what to do. I'm so overwhelmed. It's been manageable. So I think now I can say that I've been doing this in wartime for over about 6 months, almost 6 months, that our model still works in the wartime. It hasn't, it hasn't fallen apart, but we're always improving. That's something that, and on all counts, I'm always asking for feedback from students, volunteers, always trying to do things better within their resources. And the hardest part, frankly, for me is like a big overachiever, straight A student, who's always used to doing really great job, is like, sometimes, I know I'm doing a mediocre job, but it's better than nothing, I feel, just because I think to resources, like, I would love for someone to give me a grant, to put in this whole like trauma informed, training and more resources and stuff. But like this is a sad reality, but like I can only do what I can do. And again, I'm just one person trying to do this while also, raising 2 girls, and it's so hard. And there's so many amazing things that I get advice on and I'm not able to do yet. And just doing my best, frankly.
Thank you, Katerina.
Thank you.
Where does the funding need most arise for you at this present time? Let's say if you were to get a grant, what would your first objective be? Marketing improvement, or is there anything particular that you would be spending it on?
Yeah, so our costs are the team that runs the program and the technology. So so without getting super detailed and then taking too much time, if you think about your experience with a volunteer, if any of you sign up, right? The platform that you use to fill out the application, someone had to build it and someone has to keep maintaining it so it doesn't break down. We did use free Google Sheets and Google Forms, and we got so big that the Google Sheet literally couldn't take it anymore and just like would just break. So we need to have like a real system for managing our applications and sending out all the emails. When you get an email to get invited to an interview, the person who interviews you, that's a staff member who spends 30 hours a week conducting these interviews so we can cover all the needs. The person who trains you, the person who creates all of those materials, the person who matches. We have a full-time person who literally all she does, she sits there and she makes these matches to make sure they're good. And when we started, we tried to do this with all volunteers, but we very quickly realized that, well, our volunteers are amazing and have a huge impact when they're meeting with a student 1 hour a week. You can't find volunteers who are going to, run the program 30 hours per week. And it didn't work. Even for little things like training, you do it a few times a week. You think you could do it with volunteers. We tried, they wouldn't do a good job. Sometimes they wouldn't show up. Sometimes they would give the information wrong and people were very unhappy. And so over time, we've sort of incrementally professionalized basically by hiring staff to handle all of these program running needs. And a big part was also supporting volunteers after your match, right? We don't just let you go and leave you on your own. Any question or concern you have, we're there to answer it. And when you think about all of our thousands of people, that's hundreds of emails every single day. So we need to have a team that sits there and again, working full time, answering all those emails and helping out every student volunteer who has a problem, as well as the technology to facilitate that, to facilitate the scheduling, to facilitate the applications. I would say almost all of our costs are in people and technology. Virtually 100%. So that's what it is. And that's what we would, spend money on. And I think, before any big improvements or additions, I just, the first priority is to cover those costs so we can stay open.
So amazing, Katerina. Thank you so much for explaining this as well. I also want to point out that we have Anna Foltz from Rotaract here today. I think it would make an excellent program for our younger Rotarians, so to say. I don't know if you're familiar with Rotary in general, but Rotaract is the slightly younger group of people. Anna, did you want to say anything, just to maybe even just welcome yourself to the group? I know she mentioned to me she has the intention of joining actually Rotary now. Anna, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, how are you?
Hi, Anna.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to this meeting, and it was so wonderful to learn about this really awesome and incredible and very necessary project and program that's happening. I would be more than happy to relay everything I've learned to the Rotaract Club. I know that they're always looking for different outlets for volunteering, and I know it's been difficult lately because, like everyone's been talking about, traveling is hard, it's expensive, and also there's just a lot of restrictions lately. So I think that this would be a really fabulous idea, and I would be happy to share it with the Rotaract Club.
Thanks, Anna. And I will, just after this, Andrea, so I'll just shoot over all the links and you can forward them along. So if anyone is interested, the best thing to do is not to ask them to email me, but to give them the link so they can sign up and get started. And we have, our support team email addresses on there as well. They can see if they have any problems or issues while signing up, or they want to find out more about the program before they sign up. That's what the support team is there for, and they're happy to help. With me, I probably won't answer in a very timely manner just because there's one of me and many thousands of people. Oh, Thomas, did you have another question? I think you're on mute. So I'm sorry, Thomas, I can't hear because you're on mute.
Tom, can you hear us? Would you ask? Can you unmute yourself? You're on mute again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, very good. I just have one suggestion. About 3 months ago, we had the president of the Rotary Club of Warsaw speak to us. And the Polish Rotarians and Polish people in general seem to be very sympathetic to Ukrainians. They're like kindred spirits, and the Polish really want to help the Ukrainians. If you could find Polish Americans who speak English, they would be a good group of people to reach out to, maybe at a Polish Catholic church or something, looking for volunteers, because it seems like the Polish are very, very sympathetic to the Ukrainians' plight these days with the war. Just as an idea for you to explore. Yeah,
Makes sense.
Polish Americans. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't done that. We work with the Ukrainian diaspora, and we will definitely try that. I think my dream though is that, I would love to continue for this program to be for everyone, not to say, we're specifically for, I want everyone to care about Ukraine. I think what I love, one of my personal favorite things is that, that we don't put on our website, but what I really love is when I have people who literally didn't know what Ukraine was, they know nothing about Ukraine. They're like, is this a country? Where is it at? And then they come out of the program 6 months later, as the biggest fans of Ukraine. I love this country. I love this culture. I'm listening to the latest Ukrainian music. And I've, my buddy has told me all about, I've tried Ukrainian recipes and this transformation. That's what I love the most. But yes, we will definitely try to reach out, because we have room for everyone. We have rooms for all nationalities and backgrounds in our program.
Thanks, Katerina. And we all got to love Ukraine over these last several months and long time now. So also from our side, of course, lots of love to you and your country.
Thank you. We don't have any people asking us what Ukraine is anymore. That's the one difference. At least they have that basic knowledge.
Just so you know, this recording will also be sent to our sister clubs in various countries, that being in England, in Italy, in Germany, also in Taiwan. So there's a lot more people that will see this than just this rather smaller crowd today. So I want you to be aware of this as well.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah, like I said, we have volunteers. I know someone asked about made a comment volunteers in Paris. I would love to have them. Like I said, the part of it is not just all people around the United States, but we do have volunteers in over 80 countries, small contingents, outside the US. But I love that, because interculturally, it's not just about US Ukraine, it's about Ukraine and the whole world. And I would be very grateful if if we could spread the word in other countries, because I know English speakers are everywhere.
Yeah. Katerina, before we pass the word one more time to our president, Levent, I just wanted to do one housekeeping issue here. We're going to have a few more Zoom meetings over the next couple of weeks, but then on October 20th, we will celebrate the Fire Department of New York City at the Union League Club with the commissioner. So that will be our first live meeting back after a good while. So with that said, I pass the word to our president, Levent, for some final remarks. Levent, go ahead.
I just want to thank you again for a wonderful presentation. I'm looking forward to joining and help much as we can and getting others to join as well. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And that's it on my part. Thank you so very much.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have some final comments? We do have a few more minutes, so we don't have to necessarily close right this second. So Gerard,
Andreas?
Yeah, go ahead, Gerard.
Katerina? Katerina?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Спасибо. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Thank you. Thank you all for having me. It was so great to present to you and hear questions and comments. Super helpful for me to to hear people's reactions, and I hope to see some of you as volunteers and others spreading the word and telling more people about our program.
Thanks, Katerina. I will make sure to forward all the links to all of you and of course to our entire membership, and I'm sure there will be volunteers coming from that for sure. All right.
Thank you so much, Andreas.
Thank you all for joining. Thanks.